In the distant future, vampires rule the night, but their numbers are dwindling. One podcast is unlike all the others. Half human, half vampire. This is Lefty Speaks, the official podcast for Vampire Hunter D.
Awesome. I'm curious, from the years of everything you've done with Vampire Hunter D, the talk live and everything else, is there anything else that you think would be good for, what you want to see for, or stories that you would want to tell everyone?
Yeah, actually, so I mentioned how the Bonenkai, the end of the year party, was the big deal. So the costume contest is great to see the costumes that people come up with. I mean, like the Supreme D cosplayer, Takatsu-san, he comes as D or as different vampires over the years and different characters, and he puts so much into his costume. Everything is handmade, the leather armor and
wow.
Everything. He does everything. He was like a cook at a preschool, but for some reason he makes fantastic props and costumes and does really great make on himself, the makeup. We've had times when there were over 30 people in the costume contest and just really imaginative, and some people would just do something at the last minute and really quirky stuff. People not doing characters but doing places, doing animals, doing... one of the guys, his handle is Omae-san. Really nice guy, and he's went for years and years, and he went as the desert from the Sacred and Profane, or he'd always do something really surreal for his costume, and it was a really good time. But after the costume contest, then we'd have a lottery. Everyone would get a number, and there would be all kinds of different presents, often things that Mr. Kikuchi picked up when he was overseas. When we were in New York for the anime event there, he picked up tons of T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. But the very last prize and the best prize is an original short story by Mr. Kikuchi, a handwritten manuscript. And I'm not sure if it held at the end, but at the beginning you're also getting the publication rights for it. And so there were Vampire Hunter D stories that he did that way. There were stories from some of his other series. And the thing is, these are in like private hands. So some of them I don't have copies of. Some of them I have copies of, but they've never been published. The only one that has been published in any form is the Wanderer's Ship that was in the stuff that we did for the Anime Fest in New York. And, I talked with the fan who had the rights to it, and we arranged to have that published in English, and then they actually did a kind of audio drama of it. We had a live reading by the voice talent who were there, and so it was a really good time. But there are stories out there that no one has seen because someone else owns the rights to them, and I groan every time he does that because I want to Pokemon, I want to get them all. At this rate I might not.
I mean, that was just an incredible. I mean, that kind of gift is it's a one of a kind, like at the utmost level. I mean,
there.
Yeah, I mean,
he even surpassed that. One year he handed out papers and he said that he was going to write a book with all the people in the talk live at it, and so if there was one of his characters from X series that you wanted to interact with, to make a memo of that, so your name and the character that you want to interact with. And I didn't hear the part about what series it was supposed to be. So I just wrote, Vampire Hunter D. Well, it wasn't the Vampire Hunter D universe that he was setting this book in. And so he then went and paid to have, 100, 200 copies of this book printed with a cover, the works. There are only, 100, 150 copies of this in existence. And the only people that have them are the people who are in it.
Wow.
But it's set in one of his established universes.
Wow.
Now, I and one other person didn't follow directions, and so we die horribly. So there's that.
I like that.
I've never read the entire thing, but I have read the part where I died horribly. But that was just above and beyond. The fact that he would write an entire book for less than 100 people, then print it and give it to them, just blows my mind.
Yeah, see, this is why we wanted to hear your stories, because these are, they're really, that's amazing. And it also, it goes to show how amazing Kikuchi is, how much he appreciates, his fans. And, that's again, taking it to just another level of appreciation and interaction. It's really, really leading by positive example is.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think it comes from the fact that he and Amano and, everyone working professionally, they all started out as fans and they remember their roots. And Amano is a huge Neal Adams fan. And when he would be at comic events, he would go to Neal Adams and get an autograph, get a sketch from him. When I met Amano in New York, we talked about Neal Adams because I'm also a big fan. And Mr. Kikuchi, when he met Christopher Lee, had a picture taken with him and got his autograph. And so they are fans and they remember what it's like to love someone's work, and that, without the fans, without the people listening to this, we are nothing. We'd probably still do this, but it wouldn't mean as much. And I think that's really important. Some of my first interactions in fandom, I was asking about anime, and I had some contact with Fred Patton, who was in, the CFO out in California. And, I was just a snot-nosed kid, but he took time to write back to me. He forwarded my letter to a company that was doing some anime program, and I was just blown away. And that set the standard for me that, you just got to pay that forward, and you got to take care of the fans because you were a fan, and these people are the next generation professionals.
Yeah, I love the organically, pushing it forward. That's really, it's I love seeing that. It doesn't happen as much here in Hollywood, but I do love seeing that. And it's just it's magic when it happens, because it's so inspiring for, not only the people that are on the receiving end of that, but anyone who becomes aware of it. That it's inspirational to see that happen. Yeah.
It's great. And out of the people at the Talk Live, a lot of people who come there are already professional writers or animators or things like that. But of the people I know there, since going to the Talk Live, one of them became a professional illustrator, one of them became a professional mangaka. A number of them have become professional writers. And, in part, I think it's from that influence and that, enthusiasm and that positive example. He writes an incredible amount. He only sleeps about 4 hours a night. He lies down and writes to conserve his strength, but it's just, incredible that he still will take time to show movies to a bunch of kids all night and answer their questions and sit for an hour and sign any book that they want. It's inspiring.
Yeah, I remember when you guys had all contacted me back because we had sent over that we've shared it on the English side on with some Kickstarter updates and to fans from Message from Mars, the short film that a group here made. It was a group that when they were just out of college up in Idaho in Boise, and we'd run into them at conventions and we'd learn their story, and they ended up spending I think 2 years making the short film, and we've invited them and we'll have them on the podcast as well to discuss what they've done. And when they showed it to us, we had shared it with everybody on the Japanese team, and Kikuchi ended up watching it and he goes, "Oh, I'm going to share this," and he shared it at a talk live. and I thought that was awesome. I'm like, this is talk about a full circle move for it. And
yeah, you shared it with me and I watched it at work, and it was the day I was going into Tokyo to see him, and I shared it with him in the green room, and he was like, "Yeah, can we get this up on the big screen?" I was like, yeah. And so we showed it to everyone and they loved it. I just yesterday, the day before, I ran across pictures of it up on the big screen and him sitting in front of it, and he loved it. And I watched that probably about 2 weeks ago. I was at a school and the teachers there didn't know that I did the Vampire Hunter D translations, but they were fans. And so I showed them that video again, and it still blows me away. When they're on, please tell them I love that. And that's the only YouTube video I've left a comment on ever. I literally registered with YouTube to comment on their video and tell them how awesome it was. And that still stands. I've never commented on another YouTube video. I think I'm going to have to comment on another one because I don't know if you've seen the animated short called Origami, but it won an Student Academy Award. I think it got the silver prize, and it was by a Japanese animator working alone, but it's computer generated, but he's specializes in origami. If you get a chance, check it out. But he was speaking in Matsumoto, and I went to listen to his discussion, and he was really nice, and just talked about how he generated the short film. But it's beautiful, and it incorporated, like most art, what he knew, which was origami folding, with the technology that he was learning, which was, the computer software, and just made something beautiful. So, Origami, check it out.
Okay.
So I think I'll have to comment on his channel too, because I really liked his talk, and of course I loved his short, and I'm hoping he gets a genuine Academy Award as well. That
is awesome. You never know what thing you might do that gets you started. Like when I first graduated, I had already graduated, and my best friend asked me if I would then produce his student film. And I said, okay. And so we went all out. We pulled in tons of our friends and family, and we went nuts for his and what we decided to do with it. Far more than what you think you would typically do for a student film. And we don't know what we're doing. We've just graduated from college. He's about to graduate. And it turns out that one of our friends, his mom, went to church and was friends with the wife of one of the senior VPs at Fox. And so she gets a DVD of this from us. I mean, it's with hand Sharpie written title on it. She gets that from us of this short film, gives it to her friend, who gives it to her husband. And she comes back and she calls me because we had pulled her son, who was one of our friends, into helping us do this short film, this student film. I get a call from her saying, I need you to promise me that I'm going to give you this phone number. You can never share it with anyone. You can't, you're sworn to secrecy on what I'm about to give you and tell you. Okay, sure. I don't know what's going on, but I promise you. Oh, sure. And she tells me who he is and the phone number and why I need to call him. And the guy became our mentor for, the rest of my best friend's life, because he died when we were 28 from cancer. But so for his life and still my life, we all still talk. And this, I look back on it, I'm like, yeah, that is a student film. That is definitely a student film. But this guy was just the kindest, most polite guy, gave us great advice and mentorship for years. Through him, we met some people that we have been friends with now for decades out of it. And I mean, I wouldn't have thought that one of the, a senior VP for Fox, division head, would go out of his way for a bunch of college students. And
yeah, well, I mean, sometimes, talent and, when, even if it's a student film, it can reveal, certain levels of sophistication or truly, a story that really is compelling and people can really connect with. I mean, I know the oddest thing in 2000, I was I was advising for a company called AEG, Alderac Entertainment Group, for a game called Legend of the Five Rings. But it was kind of like I just moved to LA and it was really basic. And they had they had a kind of a big licensing agreement with Wizards of the Coast. And so they made a biggest fan contest. And so I made a short film. I just recently moved to LA, all on VHS. So obviously editing from one VHS to another VHS to another VHS, the degrade is just absolutely horrible. But I didn't have proper film equipment. The digital didn't even exist yet. So it was called Five Rings and a Wife. From Legend of the Five Rings, and ended up winning biggest fan. And I did a little friends and family screening in my apartment, and one of the gals who was there was the new assistant to similar to what your story is, an executive VP at Fox or whatever company Adam Sandler had an agreement with, a first look agreement with. She told her boss about it. She got a copy of which is again another copy, which is even worse quality than what I had shown, right? And apparently Adam Sandler loved it and said, "Hey, can you write a feature film version of this?" So I wasn't even a professional screenwriter yet. I hadn't done anything. And so I wrote the screenplay, and in the process of writing the screenplay, the VP moved, Adam Sandler moved, and the new people there. It was basically the deal was all done. So I had this brush, it's okay, if I had been able to write a feature length script in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, it would have been great. But since it took me 5 or 6 weeks to write, taking a short that was all game related and trying to modify that into a short story, a feature film that would apply to Adam Sandler and mainstream, missed opportunity, but it's a fun story.
Oh, Hollywood turnover.
Yeah,
Hollywood turnover is
goes
insane.
fast. I know, absolutely, it goes fast. And
I've had so many writer friends who they've made a deal and then an executive change comes in partway through, and no, I'm wiping the slate clean. I need to start fresh.
Yeah.
But movie is, no, we're starting the slate clean, write something new.
It's almost like they don't want anything to do with it. And to bring this back to Vampire Hunter D, obviously, as many people know, I worked at Davis Films, and I had the absolute pleasure to get to work on developing Vampire Hunter D for feature film. And most of the time that my time at Davis Films, the technology really wasn't there to do a live action Vampire Hunter D project worthwhile. And we knew how important the IP was. We knew how, when we all loved it, we were all like just huge fans of the property. And so we also knew that we didn't want to do what a lot of projects do, is just take the IP, make it some empty vessel with just name only. We wanted to really do it right. We wanted the true fans to appreciate it. We wanted, obviously we wanted, Kikuchi to give us the stamp of approval. There's nothing better than getting a few notes rather than a lot of notes. And obviously, as we had mentioned before we got on recording, we can't say too much about what we've done and how much we've gone, but to be able to get a synopsis, and then at least at that point it probably is going to have to change because a couple of years have gone by, but getting that kind of approval from Kikuchi. And I was always curious, how much of that did you read? Did you get to see what we submitted to Kikuchi, and did he ask you your opinion on our suggestions and everything? So
Well, it's funny. He's asked me my opinion on different matters on a number of occasions, and usually not at a very good hour. So
Well, if he only
he
sleeps
forgets
4 hours a
he
night.
forgets that other people sleep more than 4 hours a night, and I've heard other people have him call at 2 or 3 in the morning. I haven't had that. I think the latest was probably at 1. And at the time, I was working on a translation, and so I was actually up and was able to answer the phone fairly quickly because I had 2 small children at that point, and that would not have gone over too well. Another time he called me, I was having lunch on Martha's Vineyard, and he called and he asked me a question about combines. So, I mean, I have a little agricultural background, but not a whole lot, but probably more than him. So he called with this question about combines, but it was 1 a.m. in Japan when I do the math. And luckily I was not in Japan and was able to field his question. I never knew what became of it, whether there was some, Christine-esque killer combine in his story or what, but pretty sure it wasn't in D. I'd have remembered that. But yeah, he does often ask for information or confirmation. On the script, not so much, but I have seen it as well, so we're good there. And yeah, my lips are sealed.
It was several years ago before Samuel passed away. So, and I, obviously I don't work at the company anymore, but and I handed in all my notes and everything. So,
Yes,
but I know,
confidentiality agreements.
yeah. But I do know that everyone at Davis Films, they respected the material so much, and I was, it was a process. And I know that we're like, well, we wanted to make sure that it would be a feature film franchise that was as epic as the books, and so, obviously this was before streaming got so big. So at that time, there was no way to make a TV series on the kind of the scale, the epicness of the books. So we at that point we were like, this has to be a feature film franchise that, much like Resident Evil was, it would be the number one movie in the box office that weekend, that it would ensure that we would have, multiple films that would follow. And that was absolutely how we were designing it, which is, it adds a lot of complications to making a movie rather than, like a lot of indie films, you get the story out there. But for us, we had so many other elements that we knew we needed to ensure, it wasn't going to be a cheap film. It was going to be expensive. And, we needed to have, truly an international audience. It needed to be just as popular in the States as it would be in Japan and around the world, which then you add another layer of complexity because it has to hit with each of these different audiences, so yeah. But
when you release a movie, if you're doing a theatrical feature, there's 52 winners a year. That's it.
Yep.
And if a movie is number one for multiple weeks running, then there's no longer 52 winners for the year. There's 52 weekends. And
yeah, I mean, and even then, there's really only like 48. There's several weekends that kind of get.
There's a couple weekends that are really
a couple duds. Yeah, I mean, you'd still technically win, but yeah.
Yeah, you technically won. You won the junior league.
Yeah, or as PR firms will put it, the number one movie in Argentina. You're the number one in Argentina.
Or some other place in the world.
Or we're the number one comedy. It's like, okay, you're actually the 6th movie on the overall list, but you are the number one comedy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So
I remember because I used to work at corporate office for Regal Theaters out here in their West Coast office, and so we would get in discussions about which were the dead weekends. Because it's particularly the worst for releasing a movie was the start of school. Because late August, early September, October, that time frame, up until you got to horror movies and Halloween, that, call it 4 to 6 week frame in there, was the worst. Because you'd have people going on vacation for start of school, then school starts, and football season. And when you roll all that together, plus the start of inclement weather, that's why you don't see, previously, this was especially pre-streaming, you didn't see a lot of release in that time frame because people wouldn't go to a movie theater. So it's crazy how all the different factors that weigh into things. Circling back again to VHD, Kevin, I was curious, with everything you've seen over the years for the translation, the live events, and how all that's played together. I had no idea that a full book had been written at one of those events. I was curious, with the breadth of work that Kikuchi-san has done at the live talks, what kind of sets the pace of what is going to be discussed? What series you're going to be discussed? Does it have to do with what's getting published in Japanese, other milestone events, or is it just kind of freeform? Like what dominates that night?
Usually there'll be something up on the fan club page talking about what the movie theme is going to be, and what kinds of movies he's going to be talking about, and that's kind of the bulk of the usual Talk Live event. And then in between, we'll take a break, and if he's got a new book out, he'll usually introduce it, and then we'll do a big rock, scissors, paper competition, and, usually 4 or 5 people win copies of the new book, because he gets his trib copies, and if you got, if you've published 400 books, and you get 5 copies of each from the publisher, I mean, you'd need a warehouse. I mean, he still has the manuscripts from almost every book he wrote. And so 400 manuscripts, it's just, an unbelievable amount, on top of thousands of videotapes and laser discs and DVDs, CDs, everything that he's got. And he's living in Tokyo, so it's crazy. But so a lot of fans have their series that they love, that it might have been a one-off or just 2 or 3, but it didn't catch as much as D or, some of the other series. And so every single time, same person's hand will go up and they'll ask, when do you do another such and such book? It's almost like a running joke.
Yeah, I've seen people ask that about Grey Lancer. Are we going to get a third Grey Lancer book or something along those lines? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's tough, but it's also nice because, people can pick his brain and he can see, what the people, at least what the hardcore fans want to see, and people can tell him about, what they would like. And so that's really nice. He actually had a request once. One of the fans, Yui is her handle, and she's been there as long as I've been going. And she actually asked him to put a certain character in a book so that she could go in the costume contest. Basically, she said, "Could you put a bunny girl in one of your stories?" Because she wanted to go to the end of the year party in a bunny girl costume, and he was just like, done, and he did it, and she did it, and it was nice.
Oh my god, that's awesome! Oh my god,
yeah. Because when you're putting out a book a month, it's pretty easy to accommodate someone if you've got a little lead time, and the turnaround here for publishing is very quick. It's not like 6 months lead time and taking orders and stuff. It's just like you turn in the manuscript and a month later the book's on the shelves. I mean, incredible turnaround time. So that certainly helps too.
So for some of the fan discussions related to these things that I've been seeing on our Discord channel, folks, you all now have the secrets given to you by Kevin, the man himself, of what to do. Join the message board and get your butt to a Talk Live event in the future.
That's right.
Definitely.
That's right. That's the secret
I mean,
sauce.
it's the Talk Live is like Vegas. That, I mean, you can talk about what happened at Vegas, but you can't show pictures in the Talk Live sense. So the pictures that you take there, and I have tons, but they are not for public consumption, is what has repeatedly been stated. I think the ones that are probably just like me and Mr. K, or me and Mr. Ashida or something, those would probably be okay, but for other ones, you would definitely need other people's permission. So it's kind of a nightmare. It's kind of a no-no.
Yeah. So
but
if you want to be in the know, you're gonna have to go to yourself.
That's right.
That's right. Be there or be square, as the kid said.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. I am thrilled to have heard some stories here that I've never heard before as well. So everyone in the audience, thank you for joining us for another episode of Storytime with Kevin. And Kevin, thank you so much for making time to join us here for this.
Thank you for having me.
I am looking forward.
Thank you to everyone for their support. I mean, you make it possible. You keep the lights on. So thank you all.
I'm looking forward to being able to invite you back to join us on Lefty Speaks again in the future.
I would love to.
So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Neal. It's great being here.
All right. Happy hunting, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our 8th episode of Lefty Speaks.
Thank you for listening to Lefty Speaks, the official Vampire Hunter D podcast, hosted by Brandon Easton, Neal Fischer, and Scott McLean. This podcast is created by Unified Pictures and 9 Realms. Narration by Lauren Evallen-Muller. Recording and editing by 9 Realms. Produced by Scott McLean and Ian E. Muller. based on the works created by Hideyuki Kikuchi. Happy hunting!